Toronto sports fans, I'm Cole Line and this is the Cole Line, a weekly sports blog where we'll be talking about sports, and everything sports. Now this week, in honor of the big game, we're going to be focusing mostly on the Super Bowl, but first I just want to touch on some breaking news in the NHL. The Toronto Maple Leafs have just sent their captain, Phaneuf, to the Ottawa Senators in a 9-player trade. Now with Phaneuf, the Ottawa Senators will receive Matt Fratton, Casey Bailey, Ryan Rupert, and a defenseman, Cody Donaghy. In exchange, we'll receive Jared Cohen, Colin Greening, Milan Mikhailiuk, and Tobias Lindberg, as well as a second-round pick in the 2017 draft. Now, this to me kind of looks like a big contract dump. Phaneuf had 5 years left on his 7-year contract and was eating up a lot of our salary. I'm kind of willing to bet, too, that a lot of the players we got in return had maybe 1, at the most 2 years left on their contract. Looks to me like Toronto's maybe trying to free up some space in their cap room, maybe make a big free agent signing, even Stamkos. Anyway, just wanted to quickly touch on that, and now we're going to focus on the big game, the Super Bowl. This year, Super Bowl 50 was played in brand new Levi Stadium in Santa Clara, California. It was Peyton Manning and the Denver Broncos taking on Super Cam and the Carolina Panthers. Now the big story in this game was, could NFL MVP Cam Newton take on the dominant first-ranked Denver defense? The short answer, he could not. He finished with 0 touchdowns and 1 interception and was responsible for 2 fumbles, one of which was returned for a touchdown. Now, he didn't finish with terrible numbers. He did have 265 yards passing and 45 yards rushing, but all those yards went nowhere. At one point, Graham Gano banked a 44-yarder off the right upright. Pretty funny in my eyes, but heartbreaking at the time. It would have made it a 3-point game. At that point, they just started spiraling out of control, taking penalties like nobody's business. They finished with 12 penalties for a total of 102 yards. That's the length of the field. That pretty much adds up to a touchdown. You can't be doing that in the Super Bowl. So needless to say, Denver did their job by really rattling the cage of that offense that seemed to just dominate every team it played this year. When we flip the switch and look at Peyton Manning's numbers, they weren't spectacular either. He only finished with 141 yards and also had 0 touchdowns and 1 interception. So really, the winner of this game was the Denver defense, which is why I think Von Miller really earned that MVP trophy. The guy finished with 6 tackles, 2.5 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. Those are pretty nice numbers, especially in a game that big. Especially when right before the game they're talking about franchise tagging the guy. So things are looking up for Mr. Von Miller over there. All in all, I'd say the game was mildly entertaining. It wasn't as bad as when Denver was there a few years ago against Seattle. I pray to never see a Super Bowl like that again. But it would have been nice to see Carolina at least string something together. All these empty drives that just kept ending in turnovers. It was so unsatisfying. It was like watching The Notebook. And that's like one of the worst movies of all time. Speaking of the worst, every week on this show I'm going to do a special segment I like to call Just the Worst, where I like to focus in on what I personally feel to be the worst play of the week. Now, I do already have one lined up, but this week I do have an honorable mention. And that sadly is going to be Johnny Football. What is this guy doing? I've never seen somebody with so much talent squander it by drinking and partying. Where is your focus at, man? I can't believe somebody this often is often getting tied up in all these stories and hooks and lies. I mean, my personal favorite is when we heard about him in Vegas with the blonde wig and the glasses and the mustache. I'd probably just laugh if I ran into him like that. But somebody who's well-adjusted doesn't do that. You shouldn't have to wear a costume if you want to go out and drink. And that tells me you probably shouldn't be drinking. I'd be even more concerned if my father was telling people he doesn't expect me to live for another year. One thing that's really driving me crazy too is how are people still talking about this guy playing somewhere else? This guy should not be playing football. That is the worst thing for him to do. He needs to just step away from the game and reevaluate his life. Maybe move to Florida, put his feet up, I don't know, retire at the age of 23. Whatever works for him, but this kid's going to die if he keeps this up. Then again, maybe he can sign with the New Orleans Saints. Drew Brees is almost finished, and they never party in New Orleans. At least, not as much as in Cleveland, Ohio. Anyway, just want to give a shout out to my boy Johnny Football. I worry about the guy, and I hope he can pull his life together because it's tragic watching this whole thing fall apart. But on that note, here is your Just the Worst Play of the Week.
I'm so excited, and I just can't hide it. I'm about to lose control, and I think I like it.
I don't know about you guys, but that is the look of somebody who just lost a lot of money by betting on the Carolina Panthers. Either that or he just remembered he has Tom Coughlin in the trunk of his car. Anyway, guys, on that note, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for checking me out. If you liked it, give me a thumbs up. And if you want me to talk about something next week, let me know in the comment section. I'm Cole Promain, and we just crossed the Cole line.